We're live. Caitlin, hi. Everybody, welcome to SIC Talks number 104. I'm here with, I think it's fair to say, the legendary Caitlin Dewey. I
Very
mean,
much
I
Ben.
well, no, I say that. I say that because so Caitlin writes, links I would GChat you if we were friends, which I, I, I think of as certainly archetypical in the link aggregation newsletter space, as well as being somebody. And Caitlin, I view you as somebody that the current generation of news gatherers looked to as a role model, and an archetype. So congratulations on being a
Means I'm
mother
not
figure.
the generation, so I don't know.
Wait, say that. What did you say? Say that
that
again.
means I'm not the current generation. I am the old generation.
Oh, listen. I mean, as listeners of this particular broadcast know, I'm not of this current generation either. So let's just say we've got some experience on them. I guess what I wanted to start with though was I don't really know much about how you got to be in that position, and one of the things I was excited to talk to you about was like how we've ended up here. Like where did Links Out with GChat start?
How did we end up here? Truly, I ask that every day. It is a long and meandering story, and that is,
Okay.
I think perhaps why you do not know it. I will try to tell the shortest possible version. So Link started in 2014. We're going on 11 years now.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay.
Time, I did actually GChat my friend's links. That was not me being cute. That was a very literal title.
What were you
Um,
doing at that time?
I was a reporter at the Washington Post.
Okay.
At the time, I was what they called a social media reporter. So that was before reporters widely knew how to get stories from the internet. I was like the young person who was brought in to be like, I don't know, like, hey, international desk, like something's popping off on Pakistan Twitter. Like, you might want to jump on this. This is truly a
What,
different era of the internet.
and when was that? I mean, is that on an actual example? Like your purview is not just social media in the way that we think of it now, where it's like trends and memes, but truly like the span of social media?
That is how I began. So I was a
Wow.
reporter on what you would now call the audience engagement team. I was sort of embedded with those folks. And we would just kind of like monitor the breadth of social media for stories that different desks should cover. So I did work most frequently with the international desk, the world desk, and with the style section, but it kind of bounced around the room based on what we were seeing, mostly
Sure.
on Twitter at that point, right? Shortly after that, I did move to the style section to cover digital culture specifically. So that was more of like your memes, your apps, your
Okay.
character, what have you. But I started the newsletter shortly before I made that jump. And basically, the newsletter was a recognition of the fact that I was reading the internet all day long, right? Many hours of my workday spent just reading the internet, and nothing was coming of it, right? There was not like a tangible work product out of most of that time. Like I would pass a couple tips along to folks, but a lot of that reading just was downloaded to my own brain.
Sure.
So that was during the sort of first coming of newsletter. I don't even know if I can say that authoritatively. It was during the early 2010s wave of newsletters, tiny letter, what have you.
Got it.
We're like, let's do a newsletter. And I was somehow allowed to write my personal newsletter on Washington Post company time for 2 full years. It was a beautiful thing.
Was that because nobody was paying attention, or because it was seen as an internal messaging resource, or just because you spoke a language that nobody else spoke, and so it was like, well, Caitlin's indispensable, so we're just gonna let her rock.
I think I had wonderful bosses who were very protective of my creativity, of my time. And I think it was explained to upper management if they ever asked or inquired. I
Yeah.
don't know. But it was likened to having a personal Twitter feed, right? Like this is brand building for the reporter that also benefits the organization. I was allowed to do that pretty much unobstructed. There was one time when the publisher of the Washington Post responded to the newsletter I did not previously know that he subscribed. I was horrified. I regularly swore in it, used emojis, made off-color jokes.
Which
That
I
was a
guess
rough.
I mean, from my universe, I'm just like, who cares if you swore or made off color jokes? But I guess at the Washington Post or in these sort of hallowed institutions of journalism, that's probably not.
Not
Yeah,
a great move. There was also one day I was feeling a little bit off, and I just handed the newsletter off to my then boyfriend, now husband. I'm like, "Do you want to write this today?" This would have been some jokes. My editor was like, "Please don't do that again." But aside from that, I was allowed to do whatever I wanted with it. When I left that beat, I put the newsletter on hiatus. It was after the 2016 election. I sort of just didn't know what to do, where to take it. But when I moved back to Buffalo, was furloughed during the pandemic, decided to bring it back. So again, it's a very meandering story. Um, it's the easiest version is to be like, oh, I've written this on and off for 11 years, but the off period was significant.
right.
But I've been doing it in its current iteration since 2020. So
And is it how close to a full-time thing is it for you now? And excuse me because I should know that, but I don't know.
no, the totally valid question. It is my full-time job right now. I'm coming out
That's
of
awesome.
maternity leave, as you know. So work is in a very transitional phase.
Yeah.
But this is my full-time job, and I am endlessly grateful to subscribers for making that possible for me.
Yeah. Do you find that it eats all of the time that you want to spend on creation, or are you working on freelance pieces, or I don't know what, starting your own, Buffalo based culture title separately to that or whatever?
Good question. So prior to my maternity leave, I was doing this and also freelancing, right? Those were kind of my two buckets of work. I also did some teaching as well. The choice that I have made coming out of maternity leave, and this is a very difficult choice for self-employed and creative people. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I am saying no to all of the freelance work that I would typically say yes to in order to try to make the newsletter bigger and better,
Sure.
take directions that wouldn't previously be possible. So it is eating all my time right now, but that's by choice. It's anticipation of launching some cool new features going into the fall.
That's really cool. I mean, A, it's cool to hear. B, it's what I like about it. Partially gives me a certain degree of hope because SIC started in a very similar way as an internal communication for colleagues' advice that I felt weren't, from my own sort of pedantic standpoint, as up to speed on things that I thought they should be as possible. But also, it's the titles that I think have exploded out of the Substack universe in the last couple of years have all been relatively new. So to hear that you've got somebody who is, OG and is now and has gotten to the point where it's just yeah, I don't need to do anything else. I can really focus my full attention here is really awesome. So
What's the
well done. Congratulations. We are certain you are, I mean, deservedly lucky to have that situation. I hope to be lucky someday in that situation. In the meantime, though, I'll keep my side hustles moving. One thing that it did. We connected because I ended up being recommended in your favorite newsletters by a couple of very generous folks, James Ellis from Public Announcement and um, the guys from Web Curios, who I had never previously spoken to, but who has become a total favorite source of mine. Those guys are amazing. Where did that idea come from? Is that a long-standing franchise, or was that, and I'm just running into it for the first time?
No, that was the first time I'd ever done it. The idea there was at the end of the year. I mean, what anyone who works in the content space knows, December content, such a drag. Are we going to do best of 2025? Are we going to do a gift guide? What can you put out there that you can still take vacation and give the people what they want, right?
Yeah.
The end of the year, I usually did my favorite newsletters of the year. But especially as Substack, and not just Substack, right? Beehive, Ghost, but folks operating off of MailChimp, as these platforms have exploded, I've had this real recognition I don't just have blind spots in the space. Like it's all blind spot, right? And
Yeah,
I
for
just
sure.
narrow window onto the newsletter world. And I'm like, it would be really cool to find a way to like more holistically represent uh what the space is, what it looks like, and also to sort of be able to recommend in all sorts of niches, right? Not just my personal interests. And so out of that developed this project you're referencing called Your Favorite Newsletter's Favorite Newsletter. Essentially a chain mail. Like I started by emailing 5 newsletters I like, and I was like, can you recommend 5 more newsletters? Then I emailed those people. Can you recommend 5 more? I just spammed people for like
Got
a
it.
month period.
Can I stop you for a second because I want to hear the rest of this? But can I stop? Who were the first 5?
Oh, do I
Can
remember
you
them?
remember?
Had.
Or even just one, even a 1 or 2 would be great because it just.
They were intentionally eclectic, right? So one was my dear friend Katie Hawkins Gar, who writes My Sweet Dumb Brain. She is also, I think you might consider her OG in the newsletter space. Writes just a wonderful, wise, sensitive newsletter that's sort of about like grief and feelings. So that's like that occupies one space. The Sunday Long Read, which is a wonderful weekly aggregation of long form journalism, totally different vein, right? That's someone else I reached out to. Um, I
Wait, the car's right there around the corner.
I
Yeah.
think Web Curios was another one, if I'm not mistaken. So that's my go-to favorite internet culture newsletter of all time. Just like a completely off the wall, deranged, like 3,000 word roundup every week, right? This is a really impressive undertaking every single week. Um, so those were 3. I think I ultimately reached out to Delia from D's Links, of course.
Sure.
So I, trying to represent a lot of different perspectives on this very sprawling media universe. What was the hope and the idea there?
Okay, 5, then 5 beget 25, beget 50, beget 100 or whatever it was, something like that. I mean, how many sites ended up being in the things? In excess of 100, right?
I want to say I don't want to quote a number and then have it be wrong. It was certainly in excess of 100, and it
Yeah.
might have been in great excess of 100. I did realize at some point, so I was contacting a lot of people at their Substack email addresses. Those emails were not going through, so I think that limited the effort. Spoiler alert: I do plan to do another version of this,
I was
and
going to
I
ask.
not make that mistake twice. So we should have even more newsletters for you next time.
Well, I think it's so cool. It's funny. I went out to the launch of a magazine, or I don't know if it was the launch, but it was a launch party for a new issue of a magazine called S's last night, ESSES, which is one of these sort of high quality, like subculture magazines. This one is about F1 and the history, or not the history, but the culture around Formula One. And I was talking to one of the backers of it last night, who is interested, I think, in this space and figuring out where the media businesses of the future will come from. But I can imagine somebody like him getting in touch with you at some point and being like, okay, Caitlin, tell me, of these now hundreds of sites, which ones like pique your interest the most, or which ones do you seem most sort of distinguished? Um, I say that to say many pure editorial people that I have encountered over the course of time don't necessarily understand what the market value of what they're
Hmm.
doing is, what the commercial value of it might potentially be, and may have no interest in that. And so I wonder also, like, as you think about something like that, you've mentioned it repeating, like, is it the thought that it's a franchise because there is value in the franchise, or because its repeatability makes it easy to program, or your brain just like was full up last year and has become less full and now you need to fill it up again? Like, like, what is there a
Yeah.
particular motivation around that, particularly as you're doing this as a solo operator?
I wish I could tell you there was some grandiose strategy behind it. There is not. I try to be. The name of the newsletter is Links I Would GChat You If We Were Friends. That's not like some cutesy like parasocial play. do feel an enormous responsibility and loyalty to my readers, often on like a one-to-one level. I mean, there are many people who started as newsletter subscribers and have become my internet or IRL friends, right?
Sure.
And so people loved that edition so much. I mean, it's my most popular edition of all time. And
Oh,
so the
cool.
interest in doing it again is to serve their curiosity and their, desire for more vetted recommendations of things to read. Um, Certainly, if someone were to come to me and say, Caitlin, we will pay you a ton of money to recommend just to us, I would take them up on that. I do have a 6-month-old at home. The baby's got to eat, right?
Yeah, of course.
But my motivation for like pretty much everything I do is either like I think my readers will think this is cool, or I think this is cool. I have no ceiling. I have no editor telling me I can't do something. If this is like creatively or intellectually interesting to me, like let's try it. And if I fall on my face, well, like not that many people are watching, right? It's fine.
Yeah.
So
Well, and not for nothing, but it's like having that one-to-one relationship with your readers probably means that if you fall on your face, unlikely as that may be, they'll love you more for the fact that you're trying something and it's not working, right? And you acknowledge that.
I fall on my face, how hard? But yeah.
Naturally, of course, yeah. No, I was speaking of that party last night. I was at the party last night, and I ran into somebody who was a colleague of an old buddy and acquaintance of mine who has taken a hard turn right in the last few years, let's call it. And yeah, so maybe if you fell on your face that way, it wouldn't be quite the same. Quite the same thing.
I just want to hear more about this party. Like, Ben, I have to tell you, I was surprised when you asked me to come on because you have cool people on this podcast, and I'm categorically uncool. The only parties I go to are like children's birthday parties. I have a hot one coming up on Saturday, bonfire party. Please, what is this party scene? I don't know anything about it.
Well, okay, so all right, I'll explain a little bit, and I'll talk about it a little bit in the issue of the newsletter that this conversation will be embedded in. So it's the launch of. Matter of fact, I'm going to take advantage of the fact that we're live and I can move around. I'll go and grab a copy of the magazine and show you on screen. So it is the launch of S's, which is a magazine. Let's see. A motorsport culture magazine. This is issue number 3, but it's devoted essentially to the participants in, the fans of, the culture around Formula One, which is not an area of specific interest to me, but I do think these kind of real interest-driven, subculturally located, and small scale, so therefore sort of like more easy to operationalize, less overhead kinds of media businesses are the things that are going to then lead into the large scale independence slash media conglomerates of the future. So whenever I get invited to these things, I always like to try to go. I was invited by one of the investors who is in the process of making investments in media businesses of all kind, like is I think operating on a similar thesis to what I just laid out, which is that the Vices of the future, the Gawkers of the future, the Voxes and the Pucks and Bulwarks and whatever you want to use now and the Free Press, right? All of these will come out of these kind of niche based, highly passionate subcultural communities, and if you put them together, there's some level of network effect. And then if you keep them or you put them together, there's some level of network effect and there's some scale that you can bring in advertisers and commercial partners to. Beyond that, one of them may pop because of a cultural event you can't anticipate, but that the title is well suited for. So anyway, that was why I went. Not because I care about F1. I don't care about F1. But these sorts of things are happening more and more, and New York, it would be hard for you to go to them because I can't imagine a lot of them happen in Buffalo. And it's what, an 8-hour drive, right? Like popping down
late traffic.
Yeah, I was going to say driving 8 hours down to go have some drinks at like a weird members club for the sake of a magazine that you don't necessarily know too much about. I can understand why you wouldn't make that trip. But it just feels like there's a lot of energy there, and you are, I feel like, uniquely, or if not uniquely, then certainly very well located to act as a barometer in that space. And I just wonder if anybody's reached out to you. If they haven't, sounds like you're open to getting those calls and engaging the conversation.
I'll chat with anyone at any time. I'm always down to shoot the shit. That's foundational to my personality.
Dude, I love that very much. All right, well, let's actually go back to that for a second. You said when I made, possibly before we went live, that you had come back to Buffalo. So you're from Buffalo?
Yes.
Dude, I love that. Well, I mean, as somebody from Syracuse, I love that just because there's a certain amount of, upstate pride to it. But I also think, and it gets to one of the stories that you highlighted from this week's SIC, the way that upstate, the pride in those upstate markets and the potential trajectory of the upstate markets is really interesting as a bellwether for the way that America might look in the future, and in fact the way that like a work from home distributed world might look in the future. The story that I'm talking about is from a Continuous Lean. Michael Williams, the longstanding menswear writer and just general like media made in America good dude, visited Oxford Pennant, which is a small business that makes pennants, meaning the paraphernalia that you use to cheer on your favorite sport teams or to mark your time at university or whatever. But those are handmade in Buffalo and they've built this really cool artisanal business. Is that something that is, I mean, have you been down to Oxford Pennant? Do you just like stop in there and say hi?
Yeah, I was actually thinking as you spoke, I have at least 5 Oxford pennants in my house, and I should have like busted one out for this call. Yes, I have been to, Oxford Pennant has a brick and mortar store here.
Yeah.
So I have been there many times. Ladies, excellent place for anniversary and birthday gifts for your male partner or your female partner. But when you don't know what to get a guy, it's like, oh, Oxford Pennant, like on it. Also, if you've ever been to a brewery truly anywhere in the country where they had a vintage looking pennant on display, the chances that it came from Oxford are like pretty high. I have gone and checked tags before.
Yeah,
it's a cool Buffalo success story.
It is. So one of the things that they said, or that article talks about, is one, the level of pride that people in Buffalo have about Buffalo, and then the other one was the amazing mural that's painted on the side of the building that says "Keep Buffalo a Secret." As a native Buffalonian, how do you meter those two things, right? Meaning, I want people to know about this because I want more media parties about weird magazines to happen here. And on the other hand, I want this to be, the little oasis of I don't know, livability, I guess, weather notwithstanding. That
Fair. That's fair. That is a difficult question. I will say, let's start with the mural. I have made many, many jokes at that mural's expense. It's ironic, right? Like Buffalo is a secret. No one is knocking down the door to come to Buffalo, right? And I think this is difficult. It's a difficult needle to thread. I love Buffalo. I also hate Buffalo. I think when the public or the national image of your city is so negative, it is very easy to build like a very intense pride as sort of almost a reactionary sense of pride.
Yeah, sure.
So I don't think there's any. No one is actually worried about keeping Buffalo a secret. It is a secret. At the same time, there is. Buffalo is just a study in contradictions, right? We have a phenomenal arts and theater scene here. I think people don't know about a phenomenal literary scene here. We have really cool businesses like Oxford Pennants. We have some of the largest populations in the country of different immigrant groups. We have like a huge Burmese population, for instance, the largest.
Oh, interesting.
I don't think people know that. You can get great Burmese food in Buffalo. Um, at the same time, we have a completely dysfunctional city government. We have the third highest child poverty rate in the nation. We have, um, sort of foundational infrastructure and vacancy problems. So it's like Buffalo is great. Buffalo is also terrible. Um, and I think when we talk about Buffalo pride, you lose a lot of the nuance that I find important in that
Sure.
conversation. I don't think I answered your question at all. I'm sorry, but I made a go of it.
No, well, I mean, I asked you a kind of an unanswerable question, which is like, would you rather be famous or obscure? Well, it wasn't even the question. Never mind. Doesn't matter. You answered the question, I thought, in a very smart, nuanced way, and it made me. It reminds me very much of how I think about Syracuse, and it reminds me very much of the way that the tension between um, the highs and the lows that are present in every American market, which I think is a big part of our general sort of zeitgeist discussions anyway, right? Like the idea that we are the two things that are so diametrically opposite, wealth and poverty, super service and lack of service, exist in the same in the same time frame, feels antithetical to what the American dream was supposed to be, and
Hmm.
yet it is somehow inextricable from the way that America runs now, which is a head scratcher. I mean, functionally, it's a head scratcher. We understand some of the reasons why, certainly. Anyway, I like that answer. I also appreciate anybody who isn't a dyed in the wool cheerleader, because it's just like, hold on, are you really seeing everything in that case? Are you really, or are you just being disingenuous? So anyway, I get it. All right, so we will come to Buffalo. We will have Burmese food. We will go to the AKG. We will visit Niagara Falls, just down the road, one of the wonders of the world. Um, and then we'll try to make a concerted go at fixing the other stuff. Do you find yourself like engaged in that level of civil politics at all? I mean, do you feel a responsibility to do that? I don't. I have to confess, I don't here in New York, because I think easy to be convinced that you can't make much of a difference. And Buffalo is a big town, but it's not like some kind of podunk backwater where everybody that's around and everybody at the town hall is the same people. But do you feel any more of a responsibility there as opposed to like in DC or any of the other places you've been?
Absolutely. I mean, that was part of my one of my major motivations for moving back, right? I had lived in DC for 8 years. I lived in an apartment building, a small apartment building, and I could tell you the names of like two other people in the entire building, right? That lack of community, that level of anonymity, I think, just lent itself to a feeling that not only did I not have any responsibility, but that if I chose to take some responsibility for contributing to my community, it wouldn't yield anything, right?
Yeah.
So I certainly am not at all involved in local politics. I am a journalist by training, and that is still functionally what I consider myself. It's really important to me that I maintain certain ethical lines there. Um, but I've been very involved in my neighborhood association and different like community, civic organizations, right?
Yeah.
I could stand to be more involved, but as you know, I have a small child. It's something I think about a lot, though, right? My husband and I talk about this. If we're gonna stay here, if we're gonna make a go of making a life here, and especially having a child makes you think about, what is your responsibility to your neighbors? What is your responsibility to the future? We live in a very flawed place. We complain endlessly about the problems. What are we doing to contribute to the solution, right? I mean, that's something I think about quite seriously. So um, maybe you're prompting some more soul searching that I'm going to carry on after this call.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, that's number one stated objective of Sick Talks, is to prompt soul searching. So,
Beautiful.
I'm glad. My God. No, it's definitely just to get on and talk to smart people. So but that does actually bring up another point, another story that you, or actually a story, a sort of a corollary that's identified in the, or will be identified in the newsletter today. Um, you've talked about moving back to Buffalo with your longtime boyfriend, now husband, having a 6-month-old. Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah.
Just to that's awesome. Um, You highlighted a story from Futurism this week about ChatGPT and how married couples were using ChatGPT as a means to interrelate. The corollary there is also the story that was in the Wall Street Journal about young people viewing marriage as like a status thing, and not getting into marriages and long-term stable relationships until they know that the person on the other side of the coin, let's say, can provide, or that they have achieved a certain level of success so that they can provide, or whatever the case is. That was very much not my situation when I got married 21 years ago. It was like, we're both struggling to figure this out, and we're going to put it together and figure it out together and see. Um, do you fall more on this, my side of things, or more on the, like, we did this when we were locked in and ready to go, and maybe moving to Buffalo was a part of that?
So we did get married before we moved to Buffalo. We were in DC at the time. I think that Wall Street Journal article, I thought this was fascinating. It uses the metaphor of a cornerstone or a capstone, right? Like, was your
Mhm.
marriage a cornerstone for your life, or it was the capstone of your life? I think I fell in between there, right? I
Okay.
was 28 when I got married. I was very well established in my career. My husband and I have been living together for 5 years at that point. But we didn't own a house. We didn't
Yeah.
have some of those other sort of conventional markers of financial or social success. So we fell in the middle. But I thought that the dichotomy set up in that journal piece was really interesting.
Yeah. I have, we have been very fortunate. Marcella and I have been very fortunate to have had great careers and had, a great, like, connection to one another and a great relationship, but also, and I think I get questions a lot from younger people, like, how do I get to, you guys are so awesome, how do I get there? Right. And it's nice of them to say nice things about us, but even more so, the question is just like, you've achieved some level of success that I aspire to. How do I do it? And my answer is always just like, A, start early, and
Hmm.
B, stop trying to put, like, all of these constraints on it, right? Like, every life stage change is hard. None of them ever come at the right time. You can't, you know what I mean? You're never going to be able to time it. So just do it. Um, and it sounds like you had sort of a similar thing, right? Like, if you got married at 28 and you guys have been living together for 5 years, like, that means you got together early. And
Real early.
okay, so good. So all right, so there's your answer, folks. Like, this is the way to do it. And then the other way to do it is not to get fucking Chat GPT involved in your marital disputes. Okay, so this is a story from Futurism that Caitlin, that Foster Kamer sent to me as a little, like, highlight of theirs. It's a great story. You picked it as one of the things that you related to. What was it about that one that grabbed you? Because it's shocking to a degree, um, both
I
in
think,
its logic and in its, like, illogic.
yeah. So to be clear, I don't relate to it because I personally do this. But
Just saying.
this story is essentially about people who are having, in many cases, vicious arguments with their partners, and they bring ChatGPT in almost to as like a witness on their side. Like they'll be like, "My spouse said X, Y, Z. Wouldn't most marriage therapists agree that this is, like, deranged behavior?" And ChatGPT is like, "Yes, most marriage therapists would agree that you're right, Caitlin, and Jason is in the wrong." This is so interesting to me because I feel like it is part of a steady accretion of stories about how people are using ChatGPT in their most intimate communications and in the things that make relationships meaningful and significant.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and it horrifies me that this is where humanity is going. But I think there are many. I'll use ChatGPT to write, like form emails all day, right? But if I need to write a significant, I mean, I can tell you in the past month, I have gotten 2 what should have been like serious personal messages from people who I'm almost positive were using AI assistants to write them. And I was like, this feels terrible. Um, there is, I think, I've written about this very briefly in my newsletter, but there is this thread in the culture that optimization should always be the goal and that we should always be pursuing lives that contain less labor and that labor is categorically bad. And that if we can make anything and everything easier for ourselves, we should. But in fact, I think there are many things, for instance, arguing with your spouse, that are valuable because they require effort and labor, right? It is true arguments we settle conflict. And what happens when you optimize that out? Like you just don't have a relationship anymore. There's no intimacy or vulnerability there. Your relationship is with the machine. So sorry, I just went off on a soapbox, but I find that
no. I'm
like I'm here for it.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you on all of it. I mean, to me, the other thing that is not there is that, or that you didn't say, but is inherent in the whole thing, is that when, as in these examples in the futurism piece, where somebody is bringing up ChatGPT and asking that question, what would a therapist, or what in the specific case, what would a million therapists say about this condition? Never mind the one. We're going to go for statistical overload. Is it such an obnoxious shift in the power dynamic, because you're basically saying, I'm sorry, I'm not actually talking to you. I'm talking to the experts, disembodied and, like algorithmic as they may be. And they're going to affirm that I'm right, ignoring the fact that, of course, these algorithms, especially when you build relationship with them over time, are inherently tuned to be positive to
Right.
you. They're tuned to be on your side. So it's like, if there's a way to, like, if you were going to pursue that dumb practice, you would need to take your partner's ChatGPT and say, my partner is making this assertion. Are they right? And lo and behold, you'd be wrong. Anyway, the whole I find the whole thing to a degree dark and dystopian, but I also feel like it's so nakedly stupid that it can't persist. What do you think about that? Am I naive?
And I would say there are many nakedly stupid things sitting atop our culture and politics,
Yeah, well, I mean, certainly that is 100% true. Whether they are durable, though, is the question, and I think that's we're so used to everything being an instantaneous and immediate or an instantaneous and contemporaneous reaction to things that are happening, that we often don't think about like how durable these conditions are. And I think part of what we're seeing in this flight to automation, efficiency, algorithmic optimization is a counter movement to IRL, human interaction, real life community, all of that sort of stuff too. And so I guess what I'm saying is, like, the pendulum swings, and we may be in a place where the naked stupidity of that's exposed in articles like this shows us, okay, this is just really dumb. Let's not do it anymore. I don't know. I hope.
I mean, frankly, I have been around, but I haven't been around long enough to forecast to what degree.
Yeah.
Sort of a backlash or countervailing currents there. I would be interested to check in 5 years and see where you think things ended up.
Well, it'll be, I mean, this is a particularly interesting thing, right? Because you have a 6-month-old who in 5 years will either be engaged with AI and these kind of LLMs as a means of learning to better read, right? And to get involved in things, or won't, because either it will have sort of faded from use, or you will have made a decision as a parent, like, we're not doing that. My kids, I'll have a my eldest will be in the workforce at that point. My youngest will be in the late stages of college, and they will have no doubt be interacting with these things too. So yeah, you're right. It is interesting to see, but it is also like um the implications for us personally are as immediate as they are long lasting, right? So
Yeah,
anyway,
I mean,
now
also with your children entering the workforce, right? I mean, there's been so much discussion about the degree to which AI will displace entry level jobs, right? So
yeah,
it's coming for us all. I don't know
but
if it's literally coming for us all, but these questions certainly.
well, you know, the thing that I'm going to take a somewhat controversial stance, which is fortunately for me, backed up by Rachel Tastian in the Post Runway newsletter yesterday. So Rachel is the fashion columnist for, or a fashion journalist for the Washington Post, your former home. Also worked with me when she was at Garage, and Garage was part of Vice back in the day. She wrote in praise of Nepo babies yesterday, and essentially it was that the value of Nepo babies is that they come with a degree of lore and a degree of like access and richness, not from a monetary standpoint, but from a sort of like cultural and storytelling standpoint, that is valuable in informing the rest of the culture. I am pro, because I really need to lean on all of my relationships to help my kids get to the places that are going to let them outmaneuver the LLM. And so yeah, I think I'm hopeful that one of the many people listening is going to help me find, the first job for Campbell, should he need any help finding it. Maybe that's cynical, but
Your lips to their ears, yeah.
exactly. So guys, just set your calendars. 5 years from now, I'll have a child in the workforce looking for a gig. He's very smart, very well. He's easy to work with, good problem solver, smart kid, podcast. Oh, okay. Anyway, sorry. I'll talk about him later.
You're biased.
Well, okay. So these questions though prompt obviously big sort of soul searching thoughts. I don't know whether you and your husband have thought at all about what your daughter's relationship to screens will be, or to computers will be, or whether you sort of just will kind of play that by ear as you get there. I have strong feelings about that, which I will, offer you off camera if you'd like. But either way, I think it's down to every sort of parent's individual choice. But the soul searching part of it um, brought to mind something that you said to me about another link that was in the newsletter, which was the link from Reason about romanticy and what it says about women and sort of the state of I don't know what, like, sexual relations and sexual politics today. Um, what was it about that one that grabbed you? Because you wrote that it helped you know yourself. I think that's what you said.
I explain myself to myself.
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right.
I devoured the ACOTAR books 2 summers ago now.
Okay, sorry. You said ACOTAR in your email, and I don't know what ACOTAR. What is
That is not
what is ACOTAR?
the book talk acronym for A Court of Thorns and Roses, which is,
Okay, got it.
I think, maybe this is no longer the case, but certainly at one time was like the foundational romanticy series.
Got
Each
it.
of these books is like 800 words long. There's 5 of them. Um, uh, don't Google the plot. I don't even want to see you reacting to it.
No, I'm googling, but I'm not googling that. I was
So
googling to see if that was. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I read these, but because they were so popular, I was like, this is not my jam, but I'm going to crack it and see what it's about. And even as I would stop like every 10 pages to complain to my husband sitting next to me in bed, like, oh my God, this writing is terrible. I'm like, this is embarrassing. Like, this woman sold 1,000,000 books. Oh my God, blah, 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 blah. I could not stop reading it. I could not stop reading the first one. I could not stop reading the second one. When my library did not have the third one available, I went out and bought it. I needed to read those books. And I've had a difficult time. I've talked to many friends about this, ones who like romantasy, ones who don't. And I'm like, I do not know what about those books is compelling to me. It is not the sex. I skipped the sex scenes. The writing is excruciating. The penis contains words that it just shouldn't. Just truly, difficult to read. But it's the rest of the plotting that somehow the world building that like draws me in. And I thought that Reason article did like a really good job breaking down the tropes, because they are all fairly formulaic and like trope
Sure.
based, that make these books so appealing to women. And it is sort of like the sense of empowerment. I mean, I grew up loving fantasy books. The fantasy books of my youth they all starred men, right?
Of
So
course.
even
Yeah.
being a woman in that role, I think is like very compelling. I don't know. It was a well argued piece. Actually, you had several links to Reason this week that I thought were really good, and I was like, should I be reading the Libertarian magazine? Maybe.
I mean, here's my feeling about that. Here's my feeling. Yes, you should be, and like I think there are Reason is an example. The New York Sun is a less good example, but an example. American Enterprise Institute is another less good example, but an example where you get that conservative point of view, and it's easy to follow what's happening on the right side of the dial without having to indulge in the vapidity or venality that I find in a lot of that stuff. And I don't say that to say that there's not that on the left too. There is, but I am naturally, I sit more to the left of the dial. Um, but yeah, I think it is. I think it is worth paying attention to. And I think the other thing about Reason is that the libertarian point of view, as much as it infuses philosophies of your Peter Thiels and the kingmakers and string pullers or whatever, um, it's fundamentally a minority position, and one that like doesn't make a big deal about the fact that it's not being listened to. It just soldiers on saying like we believe we're right. We believe we're going to be proven correct in the future. So we're going to just keep making this argument again. So there's it doesn't feel vindictive in the way that I think the right and the left sometimes too often feel. So yes, I think you should read it. Or at the very least, I think you should subscribe to the newsletter, and you should pick the stories that you like, because you won't like all of them.
I'm on it. I'm actually, but I'm very curious. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course.
I am curious how you manage your media diet, because your roundups are so wide ranging and exhaustive. I am intimidated by them as a fellow link aggregator. How is it done? How is the sausage get made?
Well, first of all, I appreciate you saying that, mainly because, and I'm sure you go through this yourself, I reach points periodically, and I'm kind of in one right now, where I'm just like, fuck, I'm citing the same sources over and over again. I've gotta like do the unsubscription thing and then see what finds its way back into my feed at some point soon. So anyway, I'm very flattered by that. I appreciate it. Um, I wake up. I learned from my first boss when I first came to New York. I worked in the music business, and my first boss had young kids, condition that we both are familiar with now. Um, because he would take his young kids to school, or whatever his situation was, he would end up coming to the office like an hour and a half or 2 hours before anybody else would, because we worked in the music business and we started at 10 a.m. And so he would just sit there in front of his computer and read the internet. And by the time I got in at 10 o'clock or whatever, hungover from going to see the Strokes the night before or whatever it was, he would be like full of quips, full of facts, full of developments. He knew everything that was going on already. And I took that as when I found myself in a similar position, taking my kids to school and then getting into the office an hour and a half before anybody else did. I just started to do that, right? So every day I just got into the habit of spending a couple of hours reading my inbox and then reading the rest of the associative internet. And so that's what I do. It's like my mental health exercise every morning. And I just scan through. I find headlines and subheads that I think are interesting. I'll click into them. I'll scan the articles. I don't read deeply. Just in case anybody thinks I read all of that stuff critically, I don't. So sorry, but I'm trying to be pattern recognition. I'm not trying to be like, analysis of the pros. Um, Yeah, so I grab the headlines I like, I put them into a little file, and then on Wednesdays I go back through and I just create an order of them where they sort of talk to each other in dialogue, and that to me is the fun part. Like seeing how the things talk to each other is the most fun. So yeah, that's how I do it. And I try to the extent that I'm able to not be um too dogmatic in terms of where stuff can come from, how like aggressively something has to be like triple verified, et cetera. Because again, it's like for me, it's the pattern, it's the patterns, not the
Imagine. Yeah,
specifics.
that's really
Yeah.
interesting. And it's mostly inbox based. So you are mostly getting your news through newsletters. Interesting.
Almost the newsletters are 90% of it and are the sort of starting point of 100% of it. Like like a link in a newsletter might take me to Instagram, and I might find something in Instagram that I think is interesting, or whatever the case is. I've never been a Twitter guy, and so I don't. I probably could use Twitter to great effect, but I never have, and I don't like it. I never liked it before, and I especially don't like it now. So I've never done it that way. How about you? Where does your how does your aggregation process work?
So I'm an RSS girly. I am RSS based all the way.
Okay.
And I've been building out my collection of RSS feeds since 2014. So
Can I tell you
if
something? Can I
that,
admit something?
yes, please.
I've never figured out how to do that, and so it's a little bit like Twitter. Like I don't do it because I don't know how to do it, and nobody's ever showed me, and I don't know.
But you have a system that works for you, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, that's
that's all
true.
you. Absolutely. I think it's just fascinating to me. I think the broader subject of like content discoverability on the internet has become a very, very, very interesting question
Yeah,
recently. Sort of like platform fragmentation and Google Zero, and the rise of these answer engines and things like that. So I'm always interested, especially people who make it sort of part of their business to help people discover content and how they themselves discover content. Really, really interesting to me. Newsletters, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, if you were to ask that question, or have you asked that question? And maybe you haven't had the occasion to, but have you asked that question of anybody recently who's been like, "Oh, I get my stuff from some other source that you had never countenanced or hadn't imagined"?
I mean, I don't think it's ever something I've never heard of. Um, I think a subscriber recently commented and told me that they were a devoted Metafilter user.
Oh,
I do
interesting.
also
Okay.
Metafilter, but I don't. It is my assumption that I am in the minority of people who are checking Metafilter these days. Delighted if that's not the case. I mean, I talk to a lot of people when I ask sort of like normal internet browsers this question. People will just say whatever's surfaced to them on Instagram, TikTok, their
Yeah.
network of use.
Yeah.
Um,
I wonder, partially because some of the most interesting source, like Peter Zion, for instance, who's the geopolitical analyst who I cite sometimes, who makes YouTube videos while he goes hiking on top of mountains. He's ridiculous, but he has a way of thinking about the world in terms of how its component parts interrelate and add up to one another. So, like, for instance, he'll talk about the Ukraine war as a war of Russian expansion, not because Vladimir Putin is power crazy, but because Russia doesn't have any natural land borders or doesn't have any natural land barriers, right? Brian Goldberg of Bustle told me about Peter in a because he reads like geopolitical journals. And I always thought that was really interesting. I was like, okay, so the publisher of Bustle and the Hostess donut thing debacle from last week reads geopolitical journals. That's really interesting. And I'm always curious if there are people who have their little niches. Yeah.
That's very cool.
Yeah. Well, okay, so we're coming up on the hour, so I should let you get back to newslettering and G-chatting and mothering and buffaloing, all of that stuff. Go Bills. By the way, so my 19-year-old, the other reason that people need to give him a job when he leaves college is that he's a Bills fan, and so is like
huge. I'm gonna sign that. Yeah, it's our year. Oh, it's our year, but this year is really our year.
I mean, I hope for his sake, for Upstate's sake, and for your sake that is the case. But so people can find you at links I would GChat you on Substack, right? They can find, are there other places that you direct people to social handles or to other publishing outlets or to your ACOTAR fanfic page or any of that?
That's a secret, Beth. That was between you and me. No, you know what? The Substack is really the best place. I do have a flood Instagram account where I haven't posted for 9 months, so there's no sense going there. But it is links I would gchatyou.substack.com. And yeah, look for that favorite newsletter coming back soon.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, listen, I would love to be part of the contributing team there. So if you want to ask my opinion, I'm very happy to give recommendations. That was such an honor to be. It was an honor to be included. It drove me a lot of new subscribers, and it most importantly, sort of became the foundation for this conversation. So, Caitlin, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. This is really fun.
Yeah, likewise. Well, listen, next time I'm upstate, we'll figure out some kind of triangulation, or if you're back in New York, you can come to some weird magazine launch party with me anytime.
That'd be great. I'm not getting the invite from this, so.
Guys, send Caitlin the invites. Come on, let's go. All right.
All right. Take care.
Talk to you soon. Okay, bye.